top 10 third baseman of 2024. We're going to compare this list of the guys who actually were the top 10 third baseman to the list that we made at the beginning of the season when we predicted who would actually be the top 10. And so in order to do that, we need to start by looking at the guys that we projected would be in the top 10 who ended up actually not being top 10 third baseman. And we're going to start out with Josh Young, who was our preseason number 9, and unfortunately he missed a ton of time due to injury and only ended up playing 46 games, and that kind of makes it impossible for him to get in here. Also, Gunnar Henderson was our third baseman number 3. We made the list before we knew he was going to be a shortstop. So he's not in this top 10 because, well, he wasn't a top 10 third baseman because he wasn't a third baseman. And then Austin Riley, we had him as our preseason number 2. He came in at third baseman number 13 in 2024. He did miss some more time, just played 110 games, but that's still a decent amount of games. But also when he was on the field, wasn't the greatest level of play that we've seen from Austin Riley. 20 home runs and under 70 RBIs and runs scored. And so he also did not make it into the top 10. But now let's do it. Let's get into the actual top 10 here, starting out with Nolan Arenado, who was the number 10 third baseman of 2024. We had him at number 6 coming into the year with our preseason prediction. And as a Cardinals fan myself, I am shocked that he actually made this list because it felt like a disaster of a year for him. But over 70 runs and 70 RBIs, and he played in over 150 games, so it's hard to get him off the field. And you have a league average bat with elite defense. It's not a great year, but it could definitely be a lot worse. But then at the number 9 spot, we had Joey Ortiz, and he was not in our preseason rankings. Now, he did have less run production than Nolan Arenado, but slightly better when it came to things like WRC+ and the advanced stats. He was also mildly better on the base path, and he was also mildly better defensively, which is impressive because Arenado is very good defensively. But overall, even if it's just by a little bit, that makes Joey Ortiz better than Nolan Arenado in every aspect of the game in 2024. Base running, just mildly with the offense with the WRC+, and just mildly with the defense as well. But then moving up over that is our number 8 third baseman, and that was Alex Bregman, who was our preseason number 8 as well. It was a solid year for Bregman. He had 26 home runs, another guy with over 70 runs scored and 70 RBIs. He had a really good WRC+ and really good defense, so both sides of the ball really solid for him. And he just does a lot of things really well, even if he doesn't do anything really elite, I guess. But then there is Alec Bohm, who is coming in at the number 7 spot. He was not in our preseason prediction list, and he had an incredible first half of the year. And if it had just stopped there, he would have been much higher on this list. One of the stats he really excelled in was RBIs, as he had 97. Pretty similar to Bregman in a lot of regards, just not quite the most elite defender, unfortunately. But then we're going to move up to the number 6 spot, and this is where Eugenio Suarez came in. And it is kind of an overlooked year for a lot of the Arizona Diamondbacks, but this was the number 1 offense in baseball, and Suarez had a lot to do with that. And he did get off to a slow start at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of his time with the Diamondbacks, but he really locked in as the year moved on. He had a similar WRC+ to Bregman and Bohm, and he also plays above average defense. But the separation for him was the fact that he hit over 30 home runs, had over 90 runs scored, and 101 RBIs. That's really a massive jump in the level of impact and run production from the other third basemen that we have seen here. And really when it comes to home runs, runs scored, and RBIs, he was only outproduced by the number 1 third baseman coming up later on. But then at the number 5 spot, we have Isaac Paredes, who we did have in our preseason top 10. He is a big analytical guy. He just does everything decently well, played a lot of games, solid run production, ton of walks, not the most strikeouts, same WRC+ range as the last 3 guys we've talked about, pretty average on the base path, league average defender. And I know Paredes didn't play the best with the Cubs, but he racked the stats up early on, I guess. But then at the number 4 spot, we have Rafael Devers, who was our preseason number 5. I think he might have been held back by his team because pitchers can walk him a lot more. And it also just doesn't put him in a position to get the most runs and RBIs, even though he came in with 28 home runs. Even then, 28 home runs isn't exactly the best number that we could be getting from Rafael Devers. But even then, he is the second best offensive third baseman. There's a wide margin above the guys behind him offensively. But unfortunately, he is held back by some terrible defense and some terrible base running. But then at the number 3 spot, we have Manny Machado, who was our preseason number 4. He did fine this year with 25 home runs, 109 RBIs, actually 11 stolen bases. My big concern is the fact that he had a -1 defensive value, which is really out of the ordinary for him. But that said, he's still very solid at the plate. He's not Rafael Devers bad on the base path or defensively still. Then at the number 2 spot, we have Matt Chapman, our preseason number 7. And I think this is going to surprise a lot of people because he kind of got overlooked and forgotten about in San Francisco, especially after a cold start. So I really don't think people realize how well he played as the year progressed for the Giants. 154 games, pulling up 98 runs, almost 80 RBIs. Tough to do on a team that's struggling as much as the Giants did offensively. Also stole 15 bags, had a great WRC+. He had a great offensive run value, he had a great base running value, and of course he's the best defensive third baseman in all of baseball, and it's a very important defensive position. Really, the way he hit this year, he looked like the third best hitting third baseman in the league, and the best defensive third baseman in the league in 2024, and that's really hard to beat. But he did get beat out in our list by the number 1 third baseman, Jose Ramirez, yet again, who was our preseason number 1. He played the most games of any third baseman, hit 19 more home runs than any other third baseman, had 114 runs scored, 118 RBIs, 41 stolen bases, which of course is a massive amount more than any other third baseman got. He rarely strikes out and has the highest WRC plus among third basemen as well, also by a wide margin. So obviously, he's the best offensive third baseman in the game. He's the best base running third baseman in the game, and he is an above average defender when it comes to third baseman. Of course, all of those things combined makes him the best third baseman in all of baseball for the 2024 season. And of course, that will then conclude our list. So make sure to come back next time when we do the top 10 shortstops of 2024. And then later on when we come back around to give our 2025 top 10 prediction for who we think will be the top 10 third baseman then.